Okay, I wanted to do a few more examples of factoring trinomials when they are more complicated. So these problems, you always want to look for a greatest common factor first. Sometimes it'll make your problem easier. In this case, there's not one, 2 and 13 and 20, and then you've got x's, but the third one doesn't have an x. But it's worth looking at because sometimes it can make your life easier. I can't skip straight to the trinomial because, or to the two binomials, because I don't want just an x squared. I don't get to just say, oh, x and x. So you have the outline in the other set of notes, kind of how to do this, but I'm going to use the box. I'm going to put the first term inside the first box, 2x squared. The last term goes inside the last box, the positive 20. Then these two, which I tend to call the mystery numbers, need to add to make the middle term. That's exactly the same as the easy ones, but they're going to multiply to make the first times the last. So with the easy ones, we just look straight at the last number. Now I need to multiply 2 times 20 to get 40. And so you're going to take a minute, you're going to think a little bit about your factors of 40, and I know that 8x and 5x will actually add together to make 13 and multiply together to make 40. Now I'm going to factor the greatest common factor. 2x squared and 5x only have an x in common. 2 and 5 don't have anything in common. 2x squared and 8x actually have a 2x in common. 5x and 20 have a 5 in common, and they're all positives. And then what has happened in class is when people see 8 and 20, they know they're both even. So let's say you might think that 2 is the greatest common factor. Well, here's how you kind of check your work. Okay, these two make 2x squared, so those are okay. X and 5 make 5x, you're okay. The problem with this is 2x times 2 would only make 4x instead of 8x. So it's kind of a red flag that there's an issue there. Same thing here, 5 times 2 would only make 10 instead of 20. So we need to go back and think about this greatest common factor again, and hopefully you will recognize that actually a 4 is the greatest number that they have in common. So there you have your factors. One of them is x plus 4, and then it's going to be multiplied by, there's your other one right there, 2x plus 5. Okay, so there you go. If I look at 3, actually let me do one with a negative. Let's do 6x squared minus 7x minus 3. So I'm going to set up my box because it's not simple. There's no greatest common factor between 6 and 7 and 3. So the problem's not getting any easier. First term, first box. Last term, last box. And then the mystery numbers here are going to add to make negative 7 and multiply to make 6 times negative 3 would be negative 18. So I'm going to think about my factors of negative 18. I've got 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6, and it is 2 and 9. But I've got to have a negative 9 so that it multiplies to make the negative 18, and the negative 9 and positive 2 will make the negative 7. It doesn't matter where you put these two. They will work out exactly the same. If you put the 9 up here and the 2 down here, you're just going to get your answer in a different location, but it doesn't matter. 6x squared and 9x have a 3x in common. 2 and negative 3, they only have a 1 in common. There's nothing in common between those two. 6x squared and 2x have a 2x. Negative 9x and negative 3 have a negative 3 in common. And especially when there's negatives involved, you want to check really quick. 6x squared, 2x, negative 9x, negative 3. So if the numbers and the signs work out, then you are good to go. Your answer is correct. 3x plus 1 times 2x plus 3. It doesn't matter what order you write them in. You could also do 2x minus 3 times 3x plus 1. It should work out the exact same way. It doesn't matter what order you write the factors in. One last example that has some kind of weirdness with signs. 5x squared minus 17x plus 6. I'm going to set up my box. There's no greatest common factor. It's not a simple trinomial, so I've got to use the box. I'm going to go first term, first box, last term, last box. So those two I just fill in. The mystery numbers are going to add to make negative 17. They're going to multiply to make positive 30. So pause it if you need to think about that and test it out. But it should end up being negative 15x and negative 2x. The signs are kind of weird here because you have negatives here, but not in this bottom term. So I'm going to ignore the signs for a minute. Those have an x in common. Those have a 3 in common. Those have a 5x in common. Those have a 2 in common. And then in order to get these two negatives, but that one's still a positive, if I put negatives on both of these numbers, I'll end up with the negative 15 and the negative 2, but when I multiply them by each other, it goes back to the positive. I had some people that really wanted to put that negative x on the 3 and on the 5x and leave the 3 and the 2 positive like this. That will work. I mean, you're still going to get positive 5x squared. You're going to get negative 15x, negative 2x, and positive 6. So, I mean, this is technically okay. It's just weird. We don't usually see the negatives on the x values. We more want positive x's and negative numbers. It's technically okay, but weird, okay? So we don't, that's not a pattern you see, and you won't see that typically as an answer choice. So there are your answers. X minus 3 times 5x minus 2. All right, I hope that helps. If you're struggling with the homework, good luck.